Dzień dobry Państwu, nazywam się Błażej Hrabkowicz. 28. edycja festiwalu EnergaCAMERIMAGE jest oczywiście online. Hello, my name is Błażej Hrabkowicz. This is the 28th edition of EnergaCAMERIMAGE Festival. Of course, we are online. Naszym gościem jest, our guest is, no surprise there, cinematographer, Charlotte Bruus Christensen. Hello.
Hello, hello. Thank you.
Charlotte, I'm going to use this phrase, which, given the fact that we're online, is not entirely true, but let's use it. You're here with the film Bankiera. But before I delve into this film, I read that you're working on, and I think you're working on it right now because you told me you're in London working on a movie. You're working on a spy movie, and then you've never worked on a spy movie before. So do you have a sort of a checklist of genres you want to work in, like spy movie? Okay, checked. Horror movie? Okay, checked.
Actually, I don't, but maybe I should create such list because this is definitely ticking a box that I haven't ticked before. But it's interesting how you hit those different genres, you know, because I never sort of looked to make a horror movie. I don't know that we made, but then I made a film called A Quiet Place, which was sort of in that genre. Yeah. But then you find amazing challenges just by sort of looking into those different genres and how do you, and still finding that sort of story that everybody can identify with, which is, I find it fascinating. I do love, trying to work with different genres. So I look forward to this one.
Yeah. Do you believe that the genre can be a good platform? Because this is what I always felt, that genre can be a good platform for telling a lot of things, a lot of stories, to engage viewers in a story which is in itself can be very complex and intelligent, and genre allows the viewer sort of, it's a gate inside the story, it's a way inside the story.
I totally agree, and I think it also it adds to the way you think about lighting a scene or moving the camera. So I think it just gives you another sort of way in, technically, and and also style-wise to how you approach a story. So I love it. I love that it gives you sort of a framework, but also then you think there are those rules, but then you break them. So it's sort of a nice thing to sort of go like, well, this is when you think of a horror film, you think of a spy movie, but then you do it differently for a reason. So it's also the rules to be broken, sort of thing.
Yeah. I've always felt that within
noise.
Windows
Sorry.
Closed. Great. We can continue.
Yeah.
Some movement in the frame. Great. I've always felt that the great cinematographers and directors working in the genre can sort of use the genre and create their own vision of the genre. But you just mentioned about the different of styles between genres. So is it a conscious process on your part that if you, for example, see a project like A Quiet Place and you think, okay, I want to do this. This is a horror movie. What styles of cinematography are usually used in horror movies, and what can I do with them? Is this your process?
I think that's part of the process. Yeah, I do like watching movies. When you get a new project and there's a new script and it takes you into an area that you haven't explored previously, or even if it takes you into something you've tried before, I think there's always sort of endless research to do. So, there never is sort of like, well, then that's that's horror, but I do love to sort of go back in time and watch old movies, so sort of, the way it grew into becoming what the sort of stereotype, whatever horror or spy or romantic comedy or whatever is today. It started somewhere. So I like going back and then, and I guess sort of like that's what we all do as DPs. You get a project and you get a script and a story, and then you get, a director's vision that you are here to serve, and then you add yourself to all that. So I think that's the prep that you do, is like you offer up something. Otherwise, Otherwise, why would they hire you? So I think that whole thing of what do you add to it is what we all do. It's just, you know, the exciting bit.
Yeah. In your work up to this moment, was it always the process that you, for example, do you watch? What I'm trying to say is, do you watch old movies from a genre you're actually involved with every time? Like, for example, during A Quiet Place, you watched some old horror movies, and now we've watched some old spy movies. Is this always what you do?
Yeah, I do think I sort of go back. It doesn't necessarily have to be sort of old movies, but, you know, for A Quiet Place, I know, you know, Jan Krasinski, the director and actor, both of us were like, there's something about Jaws for that. And I know it's not like a direct sort of like, you may not spot that in there, but there are some, the ways they were sort of lining up sort of a 3-shot and things like those. There's things that inspired us. And this whole thing of, you know, and that in Jaws, you don't see the shark till very late. And we have the same element that we have this creature that you see it whoosh through frame very early on, but then towards the end you see it. So this thing of sort of this beast that's out there. So for that film, there was something about Jaws, but there was a lot of other movies we watched. But I do like sort of just exploring. And I think also it's a very educational process that we all sort of constantly do. When we make a movie, you educate yourself further and further and further. And so I think the whole thing of getting inspired more than sort of necessarily it being a specific reference is just, well, I got to educate me for this project now. So, yeah.
So Jaws is an interesting point of reference, I think, when we're talking about A Quiet Place, because there are some. I think there are some particular ways that, for example, Spielberg framed the shots in Jaws that can be really that was really effective and brilliant in a storytelling and artistic context. But the Banker, the film which is presented in the EnergaCAMERIMAGE competition. This is also another piece of another genre you were involved with. It's a period piece. It's a historical film. It's a drama. And I've read somewhere that you were really interested, you and the director, of creating this sort of a bit old school but epic style to this film. So can you tell us a bit more about that?
I think it came along with our director, with George Nolfi's sort of passion and desire to also explore spaces, to make the environment and the rooms that our characters are in a part of a sort of another character. So this whole thing of status, whether it's, not having a lot of money and having more money, those sort of journeys were, visualized through spaces. And then also a whole sort of psychological thing of how you make people nervous, if they're in court, this thing of sort of shining light into their face and overexpose them to make them feel so small and in the spotlight and sweaty and the heat and all these sort of things you would do to make people break or whatever it is. All those elements, he was really interested. It's a sort of a psychological approach in how the characters would feel. So I think that was sort of a very educational thing for me, that George Nolfi gave me in terms of just finding another way into a project. We also watch movies, sort of debate and development in terms of spaces and our performances and characters in those spaces. So it sort of lends itself to a sort of coming back and seeing it and making this smooth sort of smooth style to not, because a handheld camera would immediately sort of take away from anybody to judge the height of a room. And he was really interested in sort of like, well, if it's a high, that's more money. And so, the handheld would take away from that. So it needed to give the space for people to be in the rooms.
What is your approach as a cinematographer in terms of cooperation with the actors? I understand, and I can imagine that it may differ depending on the project, but you've worked with some really strong actors and strong characters. Mads Mikkelsen in The Hunt, and now you have of course John Krasinski and Emily Blunt in A Quiet Place, and now Anthony Mackie and Samuel L. Jackson in The Banker. And what you mentioned about the space, to create a space for the characters to be in. What is your approach to working with actors as a cinematographer? What is the most important thing for you here?
The most important thing, I think I really value and try very hard to create freedom for a director and the cast, while also producing a cinematic image that serves a vision.
Yeah.
So it's sort of it's a rolling, it's a wave, isn't it? Because it's you got to protect that space somehow, but and obviously optimate the image all the time. So I think the what I value is that you can do both. I think that's a very important element for a cinematographer. But you can't place, I mean, you're not going to go and place Samuel L. Jackson in your perfect light and have him look away, it's that you want. So I think that sort of flexibility, and I love, watching rehearsals and whatever prep we bring in, or prep I've done with lighting, maybe I've already done some pre-lighting, to very quickly adapt that so that the idea we had with the lighting can be adapted into the performances and whatever happens sort of on set right now, so that we don't lose anything, and also that I don't come out and go like, well, I can't do that because. So it's that whole, and I think I really love that relationship with actors where it's, oh, so you're going to do that, well then I do that, or if that's what you want to achieve, is there any way you could that, or that sort of organic process. Once you've done all your prep, then you got this freedom, if you've done it well, to finesse and get closer to the director's vision.
You mentioned space being really important in The Banker, and I think it's worth also mentioning that there are a lot of different spaces, and I think that if in terms of space, I think you're right, and what you try to achieve is very visible in film. The story is really told not only, but from amongst many other things through space. But there are different spaces. There is this mansion, then you have a congress where there is a completely different aura to the space. So I guess this must have been a great experience also for you to sort of create and light different spaces.
Yeah, I think it's a record for how many locations we had in a film, and everything is shot on location, primarily in Atlanta, Georgia, and then we had a couple of days, 3 days in Los Angeles. But I think we had nearly 50 locations in Atlanta, so it was a lot of different spaces to take in, and a great variety as well, because they all were expressing the status and people's fortune or lack of, and also there was time jumps, while also sort of viewing properties from the outside, because they were the market. That's where they started buying little properties, making them up and selling them. So there was a whole other thing of sort of photographing houses that he was looking at, and then they started like this and they became that. And so it was a great challenge, sort of trying to work all this. You don't want it to sort of be a housing estate commercial. We want it to get into montages and make it
that really wouldn't suit the story and the social and political context of it, not at all.
No. But it was and most challenges is often in movie making is, if it's a sci-fi or if it's sort of a technical achievement with cranes, but it was this thing of rooms and houses from the inside and the outside, was, and as you say, a lot of different looks and sizes, and on a fairly sort of low budget, you know. So our lighting package wasn't. We didn't have 2018Ks to light those big spaces. That was sort of trying to do a few from outside if we had 3 18Ks, and then the rest sort of 4Ks from inside to continue the. I mean, you get creative.
Yeah. Well, just to wrap up with the last question, what is in your opinion, the biggest challenge for a cinematographer in working on location, not in the studio?
I think it is. It's obvious. I mean, it depending, you know, if you're exteriors and interiors, but for a period piece, it obviously is to try and create enough real world that you don't end up in sort of, well, that's what we dressed and that's what we dressed, but somehow, you know, photograph the world and open up the movie and open up life so that it feels real. You know, I think that's one of the biggest challenges for sort of medium budget, where you can't dress, you know, 360. So that's sort of constantly trying to keep a move to the camera so that you feel you're going somewhere. You know, there's another, so you've got to be very sort of strategic with placing cars, and I think that's one of the great challenges with location work. And also we were cheating Texas, you know, Atlanta for Texas and Atlanta for LA. But we had an amazing production designer, John Collins, on this that really was very creative, which is a blessing for DPs. Yeah,
I imagine it is. Thank you very much, Charlotte, for talking to us.
Thank you.
And stay safe and healthy in London. Good luck with the project.
You too. And thank you.
Let's hope we'll see you next year, or in, you know, some other time in Toruń during EnergaCAMERIMAGE in person.
Yeah, I would love to. Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.